just to start off with, for our listeners and our readers, what do you publish at Andrews McMeel?
Well, Andrews McMeel has been around for just over 50 years and started out as a publisher of syndicated comics and text. So we're most well known for Calvin and Hobbes and The Far Side and other comic collections. But over the years, the publisher has evolved into what I would call short form relatable content. So more recently, we've become known for poetry and profound and popular poetry that found its way into success through social media. So we've been known for gift books and for illustrated nonfiction, and we've published also a lot of web comics and more recently webtoons and manga but our strength really is in that relatable short form content.
You have already quite a few genres in your list. Are there any other new genres or form that you'd like to introduce?
So we have over the last 10 years evolved into children's publishing and graphic novels for kids, middle grade. Mm-hmm. And our biggest seller there is Lincoln Purse's Big Nate, that has just recently been made into a Nickelodeon series for kids. Mm-hmm. And Phoebe and Her Unicorn is another, and we've acquired rights internationally for, again, that sort of middle grade comics, and then more recently graphic novels that we are publishing for kids. So that's been another area of growth more recently.
I understand you're a great lover of poetry yourself. Where did this love come from, and how can you change people's attitudes to liking poetry a bit more? Because I know it's often a controversial form.
You know, poetry, I think I was introduced to poetry with Kahil Gibran and many years ago, and used to read his work. And I think Rupi, who's our best-selling poet, Rupi Kaur, whose books Milk and Honey and Sun and Her Flowers and Homebody and more recently Healing Through Words, connect with people. And I think why I love the form of poetry is because it can be very, very simply and emotionally provide a perspective on the world that helps people understand themselves, understand the world, and be reflective. And so I think when the opportunity to publish poetry at Andrews McMeel came along, because of that experience with short form publishing with these comic strips, it's a funny thing, but poetry in a way is obviously a written form of the same, but it's a written form of deep thoughts expressed simply. Mm-hmm. And I think that with the world being as complex as it is, that young people have turned to poetry for escape, for reflection, for support, and for self-care. And so the poetry that we publish has become a way of young people expressing their fears, their joys, their loneliness, the trauma. That it's just a way for people to go inwards and also connect with people as well. So it's an amazing form, and to see the books that we've published touch people's lives, and in particular Rupi's books, has been incredible to watch, and that's been a global phenomenon. So I think when people, I think poetry for such a long time was in the realm of literary people who work very hard at that, and so you've got to sort of, like fiction, there's so many types of poetry. There's that I think there's room for all of it. And if popular poetry brings people to more serious, next book, of course.
Exciting. And how did it affect the visibility or the profile of Andrews McMeel? Has it helped you receive different works that you wouldn't have before, or more high profile poets as well?
So I think we've been lucky to have New York Times bestselling authors throughout our 50-year history in all of the categories that we publish in. With Rupi, at the time when we published Lang and Rupi, we also published some other poets: Amanda Lovelace, Courtney Pepperell, R.H. Sin, Ian Thomas. These are people who have a global audience, and all who have a voice that speaks to young people today. So Amanda Lovelace is very much a feminist poet, and Yung Pueblo is another one who we have a new book coming out this year that I'm sure will be a bestseller. And he's much more meditative, and his first two books, Inward and Clarity and Connection, have really resonated with people, particularly in the UK, actually. So there's a sort of, I'd call them a class of poets who emerged at the beginning of when Instagram first came on the scene, but now they've evolved in their writing and doing things differently. But Instagram was really a good medium for discovery for people. Now people are discovering poets on TikTok, obviously, as well.
Could you give any advice to any authors or poets who might want to break into their career, or to any publishers who are hoping to go into publishing?
Well, passion is another thing. You need to have passion, I think, because publishing's hard. There's no doubt about it. Publishing is hard. So it's not for the faint of heart. I would say that, because it's hard. But I used to have I've talked about the 5 P's of publishing, but I think having a point of view really matters. It's something that's unique and singular, and you've got something to say. Having a platform, or thinking about how you're going to reach the audience and what that's going to be. And not every book is marketed and sold in the same way, and every book needs its own approach. So thinking through the platform, or and then the perspective, taking a long view about the relationship with your authors and your business, that there are ups and downs, but having that perspective. I mean, we have at Andrews McMeel, we have an author, Gary Trudeau, who we syndicated 50 years ago. His strip, Doonesbury, is still syndicated by newspapers 50 years later. And he's been experimenting with lots of different books over the years, and with websites. And so if you pick really good authors and you stick with them and you follow their career, and taking that perspective, that's also, if as a publisher, that's important, because you're building backlist, and Frontlist helps to drive backlist and relationships. And this is not a P, it's an R, but relationships really matter. Relationships are the foundation of everything in business, whether it's your relationships with your authors, your customers, your audiences, your colleagues. Everything about it is about relationships as well.
And finally, do you have a favorite book or a poem that you can recommend to our readers?
Well, that was a question I was thinking about. So one of my favorite poets is Billy Collins, and he has just recently published a short form poetry in short form called Musical Tables, I think it is. I'll have to check the name. And I love that book. It's really inspiring. And so he's been a long form poet, literary poet with a big audience, who's now gone short form. And so his ideas and his writing is exquisite.
And